Are we filming?
Yes.
Oh. Hey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of our horror movie review show. My name's Kendall. I make some YouTube videos on a channel called SciMom about my life and about my career in loss prevention and a lot of other things. And this is Braden.
I'm Killjoy.
He's Killjoy.
I make music that crushes souls.
So Braden makes music under a alias named Killjoy. I was just gonna say, and
Self-promotion.
Yeah, it's actually. I think I said this in the last time we tried to film this. We tried to film this once before, and I'm an asshole, and I wasn't satisfied with it. So I'm making him shoot it again with me, which is why it's a Christmas episode.
Pardon me as I die.
Thanks.
I'm getting
Thanks.
over the plague.
Thanks, Steve. So that's why this is a Christmas episode, because we had filmed it before Christmas, and I hate my cat. I was not satisfied
I thought it was fine.
with how it turned out.
I thought it was fine.
I thought it was garbage, and I wanted to give you guys something that was not as half-assed. I think we both are really excited about this, but I think we jumped the gun, and I think this time we're prepared. So, Braden makes music that I will openly admit I was nervous about liking, and it's fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and link the YouTube channel that he makes music on, well, that he posts his music on down below, if you guys want to go check it out. And I'll link my channel down below as well. We met working at Hot Topic together, which I know is like probably the biggest joke ever.
We met at a teen fashion store.
And that's why.
That originally specialized in gothic attire.
Yes, and so
and
Hot
music.
Topic releases holiday shirts every year. And for employees, they're like $5. And so we are matching today. So to start this podcast out, this show out, I guess, I thought that we would do some icebreaker questions just to kind of get this audience to get to know both of us and our tastes and the kind of things that we'll be talking about in this show. So let's talk about the movie that scared us the most.
Okay. Scared the most. I would think probably. See, this is kind of a tough one because there's a couple, but I think for me the most, and this probably would go in the most influential also too. But scared the most, definitely Poltergeist.
Really?
Yeah, the original Poltergeist movie.
And you and I actually saw the remake together.
The remake. We saw the remake together, and you were
huge pregnant.
You were pleasantly plump with baby
Yeah.
baby inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original Poltergeist though. I'd say there's two scenes in particular in that movie that bothered me as a child.
That's so funny.
I know it is.
I wouldn't picture. Well, you won't picture. You already know, but mine is ridiculous.
With Poltergeist, the scene, one of the scenes that bothered me the most as a small child was the scene with the clown, the little stuffed clown in the boys' room that comes to life.
Oh, and I don't even know if I mentioned this as we were talking about your alias in music is a evil clown.
Yes, I perform music as a clown.
This up here, that's a picture of, that's my bloodied hand holding a fake heart.
Bloody hand.
And that's Braden behind me, and that was for one of his music videos that we shot. That's not out, so it's...
Yeah, it was a move, hopeful attempt at a video that kind of fell apart.
And it was gonna be awesome,
It was going to be awesome, and then the director, her computer crashed and lost everything, and I kind of moved past it.
Yeah, so...
So unfortunately, the video doesn't exist anymore. But
the irony of you being afraid of clowns
Yes.
and you perform as an evil clown
Yes.
is amazing. That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, it was a scene that really bothered me as a child. The clown coming to life and in the kid's room and strangling him, and then the tree crashes through and the tree grabs the kid. When I was a child, I had a little. I had on the back of my door, I had this little hanging clown that would hang on the back of a door, and it had little pockets in it that you could store basically for baby powder and whatnot like that.
Kind of like a shoe organizer.
Yeah, like a shoe organizer,
okay.
but it's a little, little
It's a clown.
baby organizer with clown clown pockets, and you put little, your baby needs into it.
Funny.
And for some reason, I had it hanging on my door still at 5 or 6 years old or whatever. Every night that my door would get closed and lights turned off, and I would see a glare of this little clown hanging from behind my door. And, looking back in hindsight, it's probably kind of what spurred my, fascination with clowns probably in the end.
Yeah.
Because I was a very timid child growing up. And it's funny because when I was over at my dad's yesterday, we were talking about this too. He was asking me if I remember for one of my birthdays when I was like 5 or 6, my parents had, hired clowns.
Really?
To come to my house, and they terrified me. The entire party.
The idea of you being scared just tickles me.
I know, right? The entire party was all my friends outside playing with the clowns, and I was inside staring through a window because I didn't want to go near them. And now here it is. I'm a clown now in real life, so go figure the irony.
Right.
But yeah, with Poltergeist,
funny.
The clown scene in that, and then there's another scene where there's a scene. The movie basically deals with a haunted house, and they have a photographer crew that are videographing the house and trying to capture stuff. And one of the guys filming, he goes to find something to eat in the kitchen, and he pulls a steak out of the fridge and sets it on the counter, and the steak comes to life and falls on the floor, and maggots come out of it, and he freaks out and runs into the bathroom to wash his face, and the lights change in the bathroom, and then he looks in the mirror and he sees like a piece of skin hanging off his face. He grabs it and starts peeling his face off, and in hindsight, looking at it now, it looks ridiculous.
But at the time...
But as a child, I had to watch it like this. Anytime the movie was on, my face got covered.
We should probably address the age difference between us two.
Oh.
So we met
I'm
because...
27.
Yeah, Braden's 27. And I'm 14.
And you're 14.
So we met because he was my manager when I worked at Hot Topic when I was 17. So at the time, you were what? 30?
I was
34? 35? Okay, 33 and...
I don't know, honestly. I was probably...
yeah, 33, 34 sounds right.
Early 30s.
Yeah, and I was 17. That was my first job. And so now I am 24. And Braden is 21. So that's funny because I guess I kind of grew up in a... Well, I'll give my background on horror and stuff, but I grew up where special effects were already really fucking advanced for...
So when I was
how
young,
old I
when I
was.
was young, it was the shoddy.
Back in my day!
Back in my day, we had to walk to school both ways uphill.
In the snow!
In the snow all the time.
But that's actually kind of interesting because I hadn't considered that in filming this, is you and I we come from different times of horror.
Two different eras, definitely.
Yeah, and that's kind of cool. That's a good, I feel like that's a good perspective to look at. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I think that pretty much, Poltergeist would be mine.
Okay.
Like, what would be most...
Okay.
What movie affected you the most as a child? Horror movie.
Well, are we talking affected or scared? Because...
Scared.
Okay.
Let's go scared.
And this is the dumbest answer I could even fathom, right? And I get that. But okay. I had never seen a horror movie by the time I was like probably 12 or 13. And I have an older sister, okay? So my older sister, I remember she came home from a sleepover and she was talking about a movie that her and her friends had watched. She's describing this movie to me, and the movie was Jeepers Creepers. Jeepers Creepers, before I had even seen the movie, absolutely I could not sleep in my bed for about 2 weeks because I was so upset thinking about the idea.
Creeper's gonna come and get you.
The idea of something that eats organs. Like, even just saying that, it like sends shivers down my spine. Like, it's so creepy and disgusting and disturbing. And I remember the first time I saw Jeepers Creepers, it was exactly as scary as just her retelling of it. And that was the point in which I said to myself, because I would go to, girl sleepovers and they wanted to watch scary movies, and I was always the puss. Like, I was always the one that's like, no, like, I don't want to watch that. And, like, I was sick of it. And so finally I was like, you know what, Kendall, you're going to watch some fucking horror movies until you're desensitized to it. And literally that's what I did. I watched so many horror movies that year that by the time I was done, I loved them and I wasn't scared of them anymore. Yeah, and but I still love them, and I love the rush of being scared by them.
It's the same.
That's my fascination and love for horror. That's the history of it. But
that, like, weirds me out too about you.
Really?
Yeah, just to think that there was a time when you were like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, knowing you now, it's like.
Yeah. I mean, we were just having a conversation.
Queen, but I mean, like I said, that's the same with me. Like,
yeah.
Anybody that knows me and then thinking back to me as a little kid and
it's hilarious
being
to think.
timid and like I cried a lot as a kid. I remember going to the fair and just people in costumes coming up to me.
Oh,
I would
animatronics like at Chuck E. Cheese. Count me out. I was fucking.
I could deal with the animatronics because I knew they weren't real.
I didn't.
But people coming up to me at like the local fair, dressed up as like a hamburger or even just a clown, coming up to me and just.
I guess you kind of become what you're afraid of to overcome that fear, and that's a good thing, though.
That's me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing, but
terrified of clowns, I became one.
Yeah, I was absolutely terrified.
So I guess that means you need to become the creeper then.
Jeepers creepers. So it's still funny to me that as a kid, the idea of that movie scared me so fucking bad. I couldn't sleep forever, but that was the catalyst to my love and adoration of horror, and and still to this day, it's funny because I can watch it and I remember those feelings, and I still feel pretty scared when I watch Jeepers Creepers.
See, I remember the first time going to see Jeepers Creepers in the theater. I went and saw it with...
back in 1978!
It wasn't that long ago. Jeepers Creepers came out in 2001, thank you very much. Anyways, I went and saw it in the theater with a friend of mine, Tiffany, who will be watching this.
Oh!
You know Tiffany.
Shout out to Tiffany.
We went and saw it in the theater, and we were so stoked for that movie. I remember that whole summer, it coming out. I remember there being a tagline or a quote from Clive Barker, who wrote and directed the Hellraiser movies, or movie, the first one. But Clive Barker had said, scariest movie I've ever seen. And it was like, whoa, if Clive Barker is scared of this movie, damn.
Did it scare you guys?
And we went and saw it in the theater. And I remember when we got out of the theater, both of us looked at each other and said, that was the biggest piece of shit ever.
Well, it's funny, because now I watch it as an adult, and I'm like, this is literally what I was afraid of. And so that's funny. I didn't know if, like, maybe it was just in retrospect or if it was shitty at the time, too.
Well, I will say that going back, like after the sequel came out, like I went and watched them again, and it was kind of like a newfound appreciation for them. It took a few years for me to grow that appreciation, but I could sit and watch them now and enjoy them, without saying, "Oh my God, these are terrible." Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing that bothered us when we went and saw it was the fact that the movie wasn't tied up at the end. Like, the movie ended with, what the freaking hell is the thing? That they didn't explain it. Yeah, it came out every 23 years.
Because it didn't really, they didn't really show the face of the creature until the next movie.
Right. So
and I think that's what scared me so bad, is it left it to my imagination to imagine what this thing was that was eating people's freaking organs. Right. And just like the way it was like impossibly fast and could like leap and jump on the top of a car. Oh my God.
Wings and flew.
And like imagine yourself trying to escape from that creature. That's what scared me. That was what I thought about.
The rickety truck that what was it? What are the license plate beating you?
Yeah, I think
beating
that is
you
it.
as the
Yeah.
license plate.
I think that is it.
So yeah, like I said, I have a new found respect for the movie since then. Give or take, you know, if you take into consideration the creator and director's personal.
Yeah, and that's
crap.
something we talked about previously. Is I really, really want to see the new Jeepers Creepers coming out, but I'm a kind of person that like I don't eat. This is controversial. I don't eat at Chick-fil-A because I know that they are a company that promotes homophobia, and that's something that I really stand strong with. Is I don't give my money to companies or people that don't stand for what I believe in. So for that reason, I will probably pirate the movie at some point and watch it, but I will not go into the theater and watch it. Okay. So should we move on to most influential character?
Most influential character. What would you say?
You go first, because I need to think.
Hands down.
This guy? That might be mine.
He's up there. He's up there. With Captain Spaulding, though, love the guy. Love the character.
This guy circa 2017.
This guy too. He's up there too. But most influential, I got to start farther back than that. Freddy, man. Freddy.
Yeah.
Freddy he's the pimp of horror. I remember I know, going back to, I'd have to toss it up with Poltergeist and influential movies of my youth. Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I remember when that movie came out, like, I saw the second, I remember vividly seeing the second one first. And that movie bothered me a lot. It gave me a lot of nightmares just because.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare, that one haunts me. I love that movie.
Oh my God. Okay. Let me give some backstory on this. I have been a Freddy fan since back when I was yay tall.
Yeah.
And every movie that came out, like I never saw any of Freddy's Dead, the Freddy's Dead Final Nightmare. I remember seeing that in theaters. Mm-hmm. Every other movie before that, though, I had to wait until it came out on video. When I remember seeing the movie Wolf, starring not Cage. Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer. Oh my God, I have to wash my mouth out from saying those words. I don't like Nicolas Cage. For anybody who anybody knows me, they know I freaking hate the guy.
But he's in fucking everything.
But he's in everything. Wolf, starring Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer, went and saw it in the theater, and in the opening trailers, there was a trailer for Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and oh my God, the end, I almost was crying. I had no idea the movie was coming out. They were doing it, and I saw this trailer for the first time, and I was, oh my God.
And it's such a great movie.
And just
to me, it brings the whole like lore of it just to the perfect light, because Freddy himself is scary, right? And like the concept of him is scary, and the movies. Here's my thing. How do you avoid somebody who comes? You don't.
You sleep.
You don't.
You can't.
Yeah, and so.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide.
Right, and that's the scary thing about him. But to me, I have a love and appreciation for the classics, okay? But I have a very, very, very hard time watching slashers. Mm-hmm. And that was my problem with Freddy. And once I saw Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and it was like an actual structured film, and not just like, these teenagers are naked in the woods and now they're getting cut in half. Like, that is what I really, really, like, brought me to love him more, right. You know?
I remember seeing that trailer, though, mm-hmm. and the build-up for the trailer, like, they don't really show Freddy in the trailer, at least the opening trailer that I saw. You don't really see it, but there's little teasers throughout it. So, you know, it's like, oh my God, is this a new Freddy movie? And then the very end of it, you finally see a closet door opens up, and you just see this blank closet, and then he pops out of the closet up to the camera really quickly and says, you know, did you miss me? And I was just like, oh! Yes, I did. Yeah, Freddy, the man. Like,
yeah,
the second movie. Character. The second movie was the first one I saw. Tormented me and had me hooked. Yeah. Like I was a huge fan of Freddy before I should have been a huge fan of Freddy. I remember as a kid, I dressed up as Freddy for Halloween. Yeah, he's always had a near and dear spot in my little clowny heart.
I don't know. Mine might be Captain Spaulding. Honestly,
Okay.
I love the Rob Zombie films. They're fantastic, and I love that category of horror where it's like so just fucked up and disturbing that it really like makes you feel things that other films don't make you feel. And I don't know, I mean, maybe it's Otis and Baby, because like just all of his characters are so amazing and making you feel just like uncomfortable, and I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's one of the things I like about his directing style.
Yeah.
It's very gritty, and it's
that's
very,
the first word that comes
it's
to my mind.
gritty and it's retro.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's also because he's a fan of those old school, the old school classic movies. And he's a true fan of horror in general.
So I'm gonna pick Baby, because Baby is someone who you look at her and she's beautiful, right? And you don't you know
Pardon
that
me.
you know she's evil, but you don't expect her to be so incredibly fucked up and twisted to the point where to the point where like everything that always comes to my mind, or the only thing that ever comes to my mind, is Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. And like she's just so terrifically fucked up. I love Baby.
The voice that she uses is such an innocent.
Yeah.
She seems so innocent.
But Otis is scary too.
Otis is the scariest out of all three.
He's really scary.
He's the evil incarnate.
He is
out of
the
all
evil
three of them.
incarnate. You're right.
Really, he's the sadistic one.
Yeah.
Spaulding's more of the the
fun kind of.
Fun.
He's the comic relief horror.
He's the comic
aspect.
relief, definitely.
Like my favorite line ever from any of those movies is, "Don't you like clowns?
What's
Aren't we fucking funny?"
Aren't you fucking funny? I definitely would have to agree. Because like if I met the three of them, Otis would be the one. Otis would be the one I'd be most scared of.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Otis is just like that fucking sadistic.
Yeah.
Baby, hey, I'll let Baby kill me. It's like,
Me
if
too.
I'm gonna go with a smile on my face. But Spaulding, he's the clown.
But Spaulding's intimidating. That's the thing about him, is if I ran into Spaulding, I'd be fucking terrified beyond my wits. Like, I'd be so scared.
And then Otis is that next step.
Yeah,
so
well, Otis is the one that you'd be like watching his every move, and Spaulding is so in your face that you'd be like, "Oh my god, please leave me alone, don't kill me."
Exactly. I would have to agree.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that has to be the one that really I have to pick. Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses are very prominent films in my brain.
Yeah.
So I have to pick those as characters that were most influential.
I'm really skeptical too I'm torn, not necessarily skeptical, but torn on my thoughts and feelings on news and rumors that he's doing a third movie with them. I'm kind of curious.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it's been last I heard that it's been confirmed he's doing a third movie with the Firefly clan. So I don't know how that's. I mean, the three of them died in the last movie, so
yeah.
I'm not sure how they're going to incorporate the three of them back into a movie unless it's a prequel or.
See, I have such a hard time watching. Well, if you said it's a prequel, it's a prequel. But I have such a hard time watching sequels because I don't want it to ruin my original memory that I have of the first movie.
Yeah.
So rarely do I ever watch sequels.
Yeah. I agree for the most part.
Yeah. Except for Toy Story, because they only have great sequels.
Speaking of horror movies. What about, what would you say is the most influential horror movie?
If I live here tomorrow.
How about I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let you ponder.
Yeah.
Most influential movie, in my opinion, and it's probably, I don't want to say necessarily controversial, but I know there's lots of people that give me the poo-poo nose to it. Easy. Blair Witch.
I love Blair Witch. I do.
Say what you will about the movie itself. The camera makes me sick or whatever. It's annoying. That movie was genius.
Yeah.
Never been done before. The movie was filmed with barely any money, and it made so much money. The fact that they made a damn mockumentary to support the movie. Ingenious.
Okay.
Nobody had done it before.
Let me bounce off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe mine is Paranormal Activity.
Well,
and it's the same reaction. Everybody hates Paranormal Activity, and I think it was fantastic up until about the third one. Same thing. It's so submersive, that style. And yeah, they used the same thing that Blair Witch used. I wouldn't say they copied because it wasn't the same plot.
What is it? They took the same
method, I guess.
The method.
But yeah, no. That'll be my answer.
I remember watching the first Paranormal Activity.
It scared the shit out of me.
And I remember watching it. It was like 4 in the morning, laying in bed, watching it in the dark by myself. And that scene where the door opens
yes,
up
that's
and
the one that scares me too.
the foot gets grabbed and she gets dragged down the hallway and the door slams. I was like, yes. Lights are going on. I can't watch it in the dark now.
Well, and that's what really, really creeps me out is the little subtle... Oh, nope, I have a different answer. But what's scary is the little subtle things where you're just like, oh shit. Like, for example, the scene where like the Ouija board's on the table and it just flicks just a little and you're like, ooh, like chills down your spine. Oh, okay. Well, no, this is maybe more my favorite modern.
Okay.
The Conjuring is such a great modern horror movie. Let me tell you what in my brain changed it from like, oh, it's just another modern horror movie to like, this is amazing. Was the scene where, and this is like just a personal preference of mine, it ties into the reason that I hate slashers. Okay, I'm bisexual, I love boobs. If you have to put boobs in your movie...
Boobs are good.
Boobs are good. If you have to put boobs in your movie to make it
boobs in that, though?
No, there's not.
Okay.
That's why I like it. That's why I don't like traditional slashers, is because it's like I just said, like, oh, there's naked teenagers in the woods and they get killed.
But that always makes it better, though.
But no, it takes away from like the seriousness of it, Brayden.
Let me just say one thing. Boobs are the equivalent of bacon. Like,
boobs are great. I'm not arguing that.
Okay.
I love boobs.
Just making sure.
I love boobs. Don't put them in my horror movies. Don't put them in there. If I want boobs, I'm gonna go look at boobs. I'm not trying to look for boobs when I'm watching a horror movie. The Conjuring. They had a scene where they had just moved into the house, and the dad picks up the mom, and he says, it's time to christen the new house or whatever, and they have a really sweet married couple kiss, and then it cuts out. And I was like, praise Jesus, no sex scene. Because, like, it just, no, don't do that to my movie that I'm trying to be scared of. Don't fuck with my feels like that.
No, I mean, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say they don't. There's a time and place.
But they don't add to it for me because, like I said, if I want to see boobies, I'm going to go find some boobies to look at in that context. I'm not trying to see boobies when I'm trying to be scared.
I think I think it's, there's certain movies that, like for what you're saying, would it be necessary? No. For that particular movie. There's certain movies, like the original Friday the 13th. There is no heavy plot to that movie.
And that's what I don't like.
Exactly.
That's what I don't like.
So that's where the boobies are needed.
Because they're lacking in their story.
Exactly. That's
what I'm saying. It's a cheap move to put boobs in your movie in that way.
I will loosely agree with you.
Okay.
For the most part. You are correct.
Okay.
Sometimes they're okay.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with you.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but it's kind of like...
Hey, listen. I said it before and I'll say it again. I love boobies, just not in my horror. that was a fun little introduction to us as people and our tastes in horror. If you guys enjoyed that and you want to ask some more questions that we could address in the next episode, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. And we will definitely look through those and answer them if they're interesting enough and we can think of a lot of answers for them. But as far as the rest of this episode goes, we are going to be reviewing A Christmas Horror Story. And this particular episode, because it's our first, we're only going to be reviewing one movie. In the future, we were kind of playing around with the idea of possibly
2 or 3
reviewing 2 or 3 per episode, but for now, just as a first test run, we're just gonna do this one.
Yeah, trying to keep it simple for the first time out.
Yeah. So, A Christmas Horror Story, do you want to start out with
Sure.
kind of... Okay.
Christmas Horror Story is 2015 anthology horror film. It was directed by Grant Harvey, Stephen Hoban, and Brett Sullivan. Basically, the movie itself is like a series of short films that kind of all were weaved together with a storyline involving a radio DJ played by the one and only William Shatner. And I will say the one thing I did enjoy about this movie too, and going into it, I knew nothing about it.
Same.
Went into it with no expectations. And then I kind of realized, oh, okay, so it's not a movie. It's, it's...
Well,
it's,
you know,
I don't want to call them vignettes, but they kind of were vignettes.
I think you're right, but also I want to point out that it's not like VHS, for example, where it's like completely unrelated. Like they were all, it was like what, 3 or 4 stories?
Was 4 stories
that were about the same thing, but taking place in different parts of the world. So
a couple of them were kind of were connected.
Yeah.
2 of them I didn't really see any connections with. Pretty much 2 of them kind of were connected, and the other 2 kind of were their own separate entity films. But instead of like most films like this, where they play like this story, and then it goes to this story, and then it goes to this story. All of the stories kind of interwove. You'd see a few minutes of one, and then it cut to another movie.
But they kind of took place on the same timeline, and they escalated in the same kind of
So they
pace.
all flowed at the same pace, and they all culminated kind of at the same time.
And I'll just throw in there too that I was very impressed with the production value of this movie because when we first picked this movie, I thought it was going to be a parody film. It was going to be funny. It was going to be super cheesy and cheap.
Low budget.
It wasn't. It was actually a good movie. It was, the CGI was nice. The acting wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't bad.
For the most
it wasn't cringy, basically.
I thought the acting for the most part was really good.
Yeah.
Except for one particular character bothered me, which I'll address when we get to it.
Right. I mean, but the CGI wasn't awful.
Yeah.
The gore wasn't awful.
There wasn't a lot of CGI though that I noticed in it.
Well, I mean, for example,
Santa and the Krampus, 'cause
right.
Krampus is in it, and I thought the Krampus was really cool.
Yeah, he was, and it wasn't like, oh, really? It's like a freaking costume. it was good. You know, it was not a low budget shitty parody film, basically, and that's what I was expecting.
Right. But yeah, I mean, pretty much the movie was 4 separate stories with a 5th kind of storyline that involving the William Shatner radio DJ. Which kind of tied into 2 of the storylines also. Basically, the movie was 4 different stories, though. One dealing with Santa Claus. The movie actually opened with Santa and his workshop and whatnot, and you're seeing the elves, the reindeer and everything, and then one of the
smoking hot Mrs. Claus.
Mrs. Claus comes out with cookies, and all the elves are like, "Ooh, cookies, cookies!" And there's one elf in particular. Was it Shiny?
Yeah, Shiny.
Shiny didn't want cookies, and he was, pretty much fuck your cookies.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, "What? And you don't want cookies?"
And that was something that was interesting to me, was that they really did, throughout the movie, the theme of, the North Pole being this, like, happy, joyful, magical place. They stuck to it. And it made the elves that were corrupted by, we'll talk about it more, but it made the elves that were corrupted more out of place, because I was expecting for them to kind of portray them as like,
Happy
oh,
elves.
whatever. But, I was happy that they did that.
Yeah.
That it was still like a very pure, sweet, fun kind of environment. And then you have this little elf that's saying, fuck your cookies. I liked that.
And then, what was it? One of my favorite lines from the movie, that particular elf, he called Mrs. Claus a snow whore. I think he said, fuck your cookies, you snow whore. I think is what he said.
That sounds right.
But just the fact that he called Mrs. Claus a snow whore, I was just like, oh my god, I'm gonna love this movie already. I can tell it. But yeah, then that shiny elf, he ends up turning into kind of like a zombie and attacks Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Or no, he attacks...
It's reminiscent to me of like Quarantine, where he's kind of like rabid and he wants to attack people, but then he's really vulgar and saying things like "fuck your cookies, you snow whore," and same thing to Santa. He says to Santa like, "Oh, you motherfucker," and stuff like that, and it's just like, whoa.
And then Santa kills him, and he ends up turning it. It's like, oh my god, but elves can't die, and he died. And then he comes back as a zombie, and then all the elves end up turning into zombies, and Santa's fighting all these zombie elves off like a freaking boss.
Like a boss. And I'll say too, I loved the way they portrayed Santa.
Yeah.
Because Santa was a badass, but he was still
he was
like...
a grizzled old man, he had the braids.
And he had a staff, and it was super cool.
And he was lopping off elf heads.
Yeah.
Not heads, he was just lopping off the wig pieces of these elves.
But what I liked about Santa was he was still like a kind man, like Santa's supposed to be.
Yeah,
and he felt bad about killing the elves. He was like, "I'm so sorry, Shiny," and then killed him. Like, I loved that they kept that, but he was like this grizzly badass. Like, it was such a cool character.
Another line that got me from this particular segment was Santa found an elf that was zombified, that was kind of like reaching out for him. And the elf says, in his elfish voice, "I'm gonna eat your fucking brains out, you Christmas cunt."
Yes!
I loved it.
I remember that too!
I loved it. And then Santa just like took a staff to his head. And, "I'm gonna eat your fucking brains, you Christmas cunt."
I remember that.
I was
That's
just like,
funny as hell.
Be still my heart. There was also another storyline involved a family who seemed like they were upper class family, and it was a mother, father, or husband, wife, and son and daughter, and they're going to visit the father's aunt. Was it Aunt Millie? Etta. And basically, you find out that he wants to.
Kind of like make a sales pitch to her.
She's well off.
To get her to invest in
exactly.
his
She's
company.
well off, and he wants her to try to invest in his company or some business scheme or whatever. And the kids are brats. The wife is kind of and
she's kind of like a gold digger, right? Like she's very not interested in anything the husband has to say, but she still like the whole car ride there. She's like, "Why do we have to go see your fucking aunt?" Like she's rude. I don't like her at all.
And the dad is like, you could tell he's trying to keep his family together. He wants to, I think there's even a line where he said, "We're going to enjoy having Christmas, and you guys are going to enjoy this." And it felt like a reminiscent of like the Christmas Vacation.
Totally.
We're gonna have the happiest Christmas. But going back to a previous comment I said about worst actor of the movie, the dad in this scene.
See, I don't.
He bothered me. He was a terrible actor.
I get it.
There's
I get
a scene
it.
where
It didn't bother me to the point where it was noteworthy in my brain, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean they get stuck in the snow, and there's a scene where he hits the steering wheel and just says like, "Damn, damn, damn," and it's so just like, dude, you suck at acting, man. You really do.
And the kid though, with the boy, was pretty cute. He was darling.
Yeah, and you can tell he was a little bastard though.
Oh yeah. Well, that was his character, but
Yeah.
I think it suited him also as a person. But basically, they go into Aunt Etta's house, and it's this big mansion. She's got servants and all sorts of things, and the boy, the kids are like bored out of their mind because it's a fancy house and they don't know what to do with themselves. And the boy finds a statue of Krampus, and he's kind of playing with it. And the butler kind of walks up and he's like, "You shouldn't be playing with that. That's serious. Don't touch it." And Basically, he ends up breaking the statue.
On purpose.
On purpose.
He takes it and just knocks it off the table and says, oops.
And Aunt Etta comes out and she's like, you need to leave right now. And that was kind of the beginning of when I knew that Krampus was a part of this story, because at this point I didn't realize that was what it was going to be about.
Yeah.
And here was what I wrote, mostly in my notes I had written. I want to know a couple of things. This movie left a lot of questions unanswered for me. And one of the biggest ones was, and I don't know enough about this culture, it's German, it's Krampus, about German culture, but I want to know, do Santa Claus and Krampus exist in the same universe canonly? Because I don't know that it's like a good versus evil thing. From my understanding, I thought Krampus was the only Christmas figure for Germany.
Which I know Santa does exist in Germany.
Okay, so maybe it is, but like, you know.
Going back to the Santa Claus movie, he calls himself, what was it, Papa Jujo. I think it's one of the Santa names.
I don't know.
I don't remember for sure, though,
but yeah.
I just remember him saying, Kris Kringle, Santa Claus, Papa Jujo.
But I wonder, is the Santa Claus legend in alignment with Krampus? Because, like, does Krampus pick up where Santa Claus doesn't deliver toys to the bad children?
That's very
Or is
possible.
Krampus his separate own thing where if you're bad, he comes and then Santa doesn't exist? Or if you're good, Santa comes
They work in a tandem.
and nobody else exists. You know what I mean?
Santa hits the good
That's what I wanna
kids
know.
and Krampus hits the bad kids.
Yeah.
And, that's a good question.
But my other question was, how does Jesus fit into this? Because,
I think Jesus doesn't necessarily fit into the Krampus storyline.
but they mentioned Jesus in the movie.
They do mention Jesus.
And
in
it
the
was
movie.
kind of like, because like, we'll get to it, but there was a scene in church and basically the mother and the daughter were confessing their sins and it made Krampus go away.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like, how the fuck does Jesus tie into
this particular storyline? The car crashes,
Yeah.
and they get attacked by Krampus out in the snow, and the mother and daughter end up running into a church, and
they go into a
the
confession box and they're sitting there confessing their sins and
that was the thing too. The daughter says we have to confess our sins
Yeah.
for them to go away, and it's like, how do you know this?
well, that's what bothered me. Was it was like, wait a minute, when did religion come into this?
Yeah.
Because I thought we were talking about the legend of Krampus.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about something completely different. So does Krampus, in his legend, exist as a fighting force for Satan or an opposing force in Jesus? I don't know.
That's a good question.
I'm an atheist. I think you
I would
identify as an atheist as
I
well.
I don't like to tie it, to genreify myself, I suppose is the way of putting it. If I was to have to be pigeonholed into, I would say atheist.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm open to believing anything if it's proven to me.
Yeah. That is what atheism is.
Yeah.
Right now I have no sufficient evidence to believe that there is a God. That's what it means.
Well, there is a God. He's an alien from another planet.
So-
True. I mean, facts are facts.
That was my biggest beef with this movie, was these different stories coming together to kind of, not stories necessarily, but the different like lore. Like in the Krampus lore, does Jesus exist? Does Santa exist? And then like the same with all of the rest of them.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I thought that was interesting to have, because you don't really, most Christmas movies, they don't really talk about, that involve Santa Claus at least, they don't talk about Jesus really.
Yeah.
So it is kind of an interesting
Well, because those
question
things
to
don't
ask.
really go hand in hand.
Right.
Because when
they
you
really,
put
they really
Jesus,
don't have anything to do with one another, really, essentially.
no.
When
you put Santa Claus, who's riding in a magic sleigh, in the same context as Jesus, who is supposed to be the only God, and you're not supposed to talk about witchcraft and all these things, they don't fit together.
They don't.
Those two things do not,
They don't.
agree with each other.
Yeah, so.
And so that's what I'm wondering is I'll have to do more research, but I wonder if Krampus and Santa Claus are are the same way.
Yeah.
If they're not supposed to agree with each other.
Brothers separated at birth. Like Zeus and Hades.
Yes! That's what I'm wondering.
Oh my God.
That's what I'm wondering.
They're Christmas gods.
Krampus and Santa.
Oh my God, they're Christmas gods. The next storyline they show in the movie is the family that are a husband and wife who are taking their young son, out into to get a tree, cut down a Christmas tree, and the son or the father leads them to this no trespassing area, tree farm, and they hop over the fence, and the wife is all like, no, I don't think we should do this, and he's like, oh, it'll be okay, and they go looking for a tree, and the kid comes up missing. They can't find the kid, and so they're looking all over for this little kid, and he's probably 5-6 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
And they can't find the kid, and the kid turns up inside this little tree, hollowed out tree.
And let me point out, this made me laugh my ass off because there were a lot of things reminiscent of Stranger Things, because the son's name was Will, and the mother and father are running around saying Will, and it just
wouldn't it be funny if you just see the family, the husband and wife yelling Will, and then all of a sudden from this direction you hear Winona Ryder running through the woods. Will!
Winona Ryder is my queen, but that's a side note. And so that made me laugh, but then also it was kind of the same thing as too in the movie was
tree.
Well, with the tree leading to the upside down, but also the whole time that they were calling for Will could hear them and it showed them in the same forest, right? As though they were in the same place yelling for each other, but neither could hear the other and neither could see the other, and it was extremely reminiscent of Stranger Things. So I don't know if maybe Stranger Things had some inspiration from this movie, but it was funny that those things tied together so perfectly, even down to the name.
But yeah, so they find the child, and they get the tree, take it home, and the kid's not quite right. And there's a scene where the dad comes home, and the mom's sitting there at the dinner table with the child, and they're eating spaghetti, and the kid's like a little guy, and mom tells the husband how he's taken down 2 plates of spaghetti already. And this kid, oh my God, how about the acting chops in that kid?
He's cute.
That kid played the best crazy little kid ever.
He was good.
Dad goes to grab his plate. Kid takes a fork and stabs Dad's hand, and the kid just gives this creepy look, oh my God. Yeah, just
okay.
Creeps me out.
So now it's time for me to talk about the thing I didn't want to talk about, but I have to talk about. Okay. This kid. Okay. First, there's a scene. Right?
I know what you're
No,
talking about.
that's the second scene. The first scene, the mother's taking a shower, and she gets out of the shower, and her son's just standing there staring at her. And she says, get out. And at first, for me at least, as a mother, it's not weird for me to be naked in front of my child. Because, that's just how, but I'm also a single mom, so I don't know, maybe the dynamic's different with other people, but that's how close we are is,
Well, he's a young boy,
it's not a big
too,
deal.
so
And he's so little.
It's not like it's a 10-year-old kid,
Yeah, and I remember
oogling mom.
Right, he was just standing there.
He's like
and
5 years old.
I remember my mom taking showers in front of us when we were little, and it wasn't a big deal, but so that was the first time, and I was like, okay, whatever, he's just standing in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And then
the scene.
There was a scene where I don't even want to talk about it. I'm smirking because I'm so disturbed. Okay, mom's sleeping,
and you just see the end of the bed covers lift up,
and
by her feet, and you just see the covers, something under the covers moving up the mom, and then you see a hand come up out of the covers. Boobies. And it's the little kid's hand.
And before the hand pops out,
before the hand pops up there,
the mom is moaning. And you see motion down below, and I'm so disturbed I don't even want to talk about it, but literally from what I gathered, and I think you had the same conclusion drawn, the kid was either touching his mom or eating out his mom, and I want to vomit. It was too
awesome.
Much. No, it was too much for me.
It was a bit disturbing.
It was, and
but to add to that though, after the hand comes up and disappears, the mom wakes up and she freaks out. She goes and looks in the kid's bedroom, and he's sound asleep. So it wasn't the child. It's like she was, being thought, it was
or it was the changeling, because what we didn't talk about yet is that The reason the kid was different is because
it wasn't the kid. It was a changeling. They found a changeling out there that was pretending to be the kid.
And that's another thing I want to know is, do changelings fit into the Krampus story? Do they fit in... Where the fuck do we get changelings?
Dude, how do they fit into Christmas? I don't think they necessarily do fit into Christmas in general. I think it was just like hey, let's take this Christmas storyline and throw a changeling into it.
I guess. I mean, but if it was directly relevant to Krampus, like if Krampus was turning people into changelings, I'd get it. But like, he's turning people into zombies. He's talking about Jesus is the person that fucking, protects people from him. And then we've got changelings. Like, it's so much. That was my biggest issue.
The next storyline in the movie, I don't know if it's chronologically the next storyline, but the
one we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, the last storyline that we haven't talked about is... has to do with a school that there was a murder that took place, or was it a murder? Or
I think so.
Yeah, it was like a murder that took place, and these kids break into the high school to kind of figure out what had happened, and
for whatever reason, here's what I don't understand, because at one point the principal is there, right?
Why is he there?
One, was it their school? Two, was the school shut down?
Well, I figured it'd be Christmas break. Why was he there?
Why was he there? Was it their school? If he was their school, why there were still skeletons and shit there? They hadn't touched whatever the basement or whatever was still there.
Yeah, that is a very good point.
I was really confused about what was going on there.
Yeah, that out of all the storylines, this is the one that kind of I was the most confused about.
Yeah.
It didn't really make a lot of sense to me where they were at, if it was their school. If something like that happened there, why is the school still open and all this stuff is
why
still
did
there?
they why did they not clear it out?
Yeah.
And so basically it's one female, two males, right? And the female
originally it looked like it was going to be two couples, but it only ended up being one girl and two guys. I don't know why the second girl didn't end up going.
I don't recall. But
either.
she basically and I don't know why, became like a succubus. Like, she was seducing both boys. You're right, because one of the boys had a girlfriend. That's why. But why? I don't remember how she got possessed. But
she got possessed. I assume she got possessed by
the spirit
of. Because basically, what had happened is
the girl who was murdered.
A girl was murdered. She was pregnant, and it was like a Catholic school, and the nuns there forced her to have an abortion. I think. And I think...
And it was supposed to be a virgin birth, or a virgin conception.
They talked about
miraculous conception.
That's because they're basically doing like a video cast, and one of the guys is controlling the camera, and the girl is acting like a news reporter with her microphone, telling the story of what happened and whatnot. And she eventually ends up... I was under the impression she was being possessed by the spirit of said girl.
Yeah.
And
how does that fucking fit into Krampus? That's
I don't know. Again, this really didn't have anything to do with Christmas at all.
No, well, aside from the virgin birth, but that even
aside
wasn't
from the virgin birth, which is like grasping it.
Jesus, which again, what the fuck? I mean,
So she ends up being possessed and tries seducing one of the guys, and pulls him into another room, and he's like, wait, I have a girl, I'm good.
Yeah.
And she, kind of gets pissed at him and leaves, and she goes into the next room, and, pretty much, more or less rapes
she forces herself upon this guy.
She forces herself on him, and
he...
he
no protection was used. We'll say
no
that
protection
much.
was used, and he, does the teenage boy done.
Yeah.
And she stands up, and she's like, "What did you just do to me?" And he's like, "What do you mean? What did I do to you? You were on top of me. I didn't do anything." And and then going out of context, there was what was it that was written on the wall? There was something written on the wall before all this happened, when they're kind of investigating.
It was a Bible verse.
Yeah.
It was something like for unto us a child is born, or something. Yeah. It was some kind of verse about Jesus being born.
I really ain't got much to say about this particular.
No, I don't either.
I didn't really know what was going on. Really, it was confusing.
And at the end they showed the girl and her seeing the spirit of the girl who had died up in the stirrups in a hospital gurney, and the nuns around her, and it was just, it didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it didn't.
In this context, it didn't.
By itself in another movie, maybe.
Sure, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But yeah, with the context of everything in this particular series of stories,
Yeah.
it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Other than, like you had said, the only way would be grasping a straw, saying an immaculate conception.
Yeah.
Type, the birth of Jesus type thing, and
Right.
And
well, and another question I had is, does Krampus have any kind of a sexual theme to him, to where that could be connected in that way? Because otherwise, where the hell does this story fit in?
I would have to agree with that. Like I said, this is out of the 4 stories, it was the most confusing. It didn't really fit. It didn't have anything to do with Christmas that I saw, other than the fact that it might have taken place during Christmas break.
Right.
Would be the only thing that would kind of tie it in there somehow.
Right.
But whatever, it is what it was. It wasn't a terrible story. It just kind of didn't really fit in my eyes or make sense.
And let's jump back to William Shatner, his character. We didn't really talk about that.
Dan.
Dangerous Dan was a radio personality, and the film opens with him, and he's basically just talking about nothing. And through the film, he keeps popping up, and there's little scenes of him talking to his wife and talking to his I don't know what you'd call him, producer or something like that. And
Normally the producer.
Yeah, and he's just saying nonsensical things, kind of like, oh, what's his wife's name?
I don't remember.
Cheryl or whatever. Yeah. We'll call her Cheryl. Oh, Cheryl, I did press the button, and just weird stuff. And at first, I thought for sure he was schizophrenic.
Yeah.
But at the end, you find out he's not.
Yeah, he's not. And I didn't really see a lot of, other than it was just a thread that kind of everything weaved together.
Yeah.
He's talking about his family, that he has a son, and you see a picture in his studio as a reference, and it's the family who is going to see the Aunt Etta, was it Etta?
Etta.
Yeah, the Aunt Etta. So you see that he's connected to the family, the well-off family. And then the other way that it's tied in is with the Santa storyline.
Yeah, it was just weird.
That we didn't talk about was the end of the Santa storyline. Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, because the rest of this isn't spoilers.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a kind of a big twist for that particular storyline, which I thought was an ingenious twist. Basically, the Santa storyline with Santa fighting off the zombie elves and stuff, it kind of culminates with, that story ends with where the movie actually began. Because the movie actually began, before you see Shatner, the movie began with Santa and his sleigh. And you see the doors banging, and he's like, who's there? And then it cuts to 8 hours earlier, and then you see Santa walking through the workshop. Basically, it cuts back to that scene there where Santa's getting ready to get into his sleigh, and he's got battle wounds all over his face, and you see the gate doors for the reindeer stable are banging open and closed, and he's like, who's there? And then is it you? It's you. It's Krampus, and the doors burst open, and it's basically a showdown between Santa and Krampus, and which is a badass showdown. Santa pulls out a big axe. Krampus had these chains with hooks on them.
Which I did write in my notes. I think that chains are consistent with the Krampus legend from what I have heard of it.
I believe they are. Yeah. Every time I've seen something with Krampus, I'm pretty sure he's usually had chains.
Yeah.
So there's this showdown between Santa and Krampus, and Krampus is kind of faunish looking. He's got like goat legs, and he's all kind of like white and like light blue, and
I feel like horns. He's kind of like an anthropomorphic goat, basically, because he's got
huh? Big words.
I'm a little bit smarter than I look. He's got the goat legs, but then it's kind of like a goat body, but it's and the goat head, but it's more human with more torso. Human features. Yeah.
He's got teeth. He doesn't talk. He just growls.
But they did a good job of him. They really did.
Really cool fight scene between them. Santa, badass with the axe. And,
yeah.
And basically Santa cuts off one of, Krampus's horns, and Krampus falls to the ground. And Krampus, all of a sudden, Santa's about to go for the death blow, and Krampus looks up at him and says, "No, Norman, don't." And it's like, what the hell? And then you see Krampus is on the ground. He shapeshifts into some normal guy, and he's got like reindeer headband on with reindeer horns, and it's like, what the hell's going on here? And then it cuts to Santa, but it's not Santa anymore. It's the guy that you're seeing as Santa, but you see it's not actually that Santa. He's got a fake beard, and you see a background that is not the stable that you were in, and you realize Santa that you've been seeing isn't really Santa. He's some guy in a Santa outfit at an office party that has gone freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And you see flashbacks of all the elves that were attacking him were people in the office that were coming at him, and he was killing all the people in this office. And so the movie kind of ends as you're seeing these flashbacks. One of the flashbacks you see also is Norman from the studio. There's a scene where William Shatner is talking to a producer or something in the studio.
He keeps mentioning the name Norman, basically.
He says Norman.
He's like,
Norman puts a he's talking to Norman. He puts a piece of paper up against the window that says "Fuck Christmas."
Yeah.
And leaves. So you basically see that Norman is a begrudged or what do you want to call it? Kind of grinchy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you see that Norman actually went out and. So it was like it must have been an office Christmas party in the radio station then.
You think it was connected to the radio station?
It had to have been the radio station office Christmas party, because there was also William Shatner. I remember him talking about a hostage situation or something.
He did in the middle of the broadcast.
So,
he started mentioning there are X amount of people in, being held hostage.
Yeah, I don't know if that had to do with the radio station.
I don't know
what it did. Now in hindsight, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting twist. I thought for,
it was
the Santa storyline he ended up being a psychotic, schizophrenic, guy thinking he was Santa Claus and he was killing a bunch of murderous elves.
But
then, it was all the office
okay,
people.
I'm going to talk about all of the questions that were left unanswered for me.
Okay.
And one of those we'll add to that is, how the fuck do those tie into the other stories?
They don't really.
They don't, and it doesn't answer anything other
outside
than
of the changeling storyline and the high school storyline.
No,
they aren't connected.
No, the changelings, the tree farm that the family went on to get the tree where the son turned into a changeling. The changeling had like a changeling keeper. It was this guy, and he calls the mother of the child, and he's like, "That's not your son."
When the family's leaving, it cuts to this heavy-set guy sitting on a snowmobile. It's watching them leave, and it's like, "What the hell is this guy doing?"
Right, and then he calls them in the middle of the night, and he's talking to her about how that's not her son, and it was just really strange. And what was even stranger to me was that the mother ended up killing him, and it was like, "What the hell?" I mean, he's trying to help you get your kid back, and she shot him.
Yeah.
And then she's surrounded by changelings and everything ends up fine, but it was just weird the way that they chose to execute that.
Yeah.
She basically found her actual son in the middle of a tree, and she picks them up, and there's all these creepy changelings around her, and they didn't fucking kill her.
Yeah.
Why didn't they kill her?
Yeah, that's a good question too.
I want to know what Aunt Edda's ties were to Krampus, because they never specified other than she's old.
That's right. We didn't touch on that too, because
what were her ties to Krampus? Why did she take it so seriously? She had statues of him in her home. And...
We didn't talk about this though. In that storyline, when the family that get their car gets stuck in the snow and they're running from Krampus. Krampus ends up. What was it that ended up happening? That the Krampus shapeshifts back into human form. And you see it. So what was he, a butler? He was Aunt Edda's butler or whatever he was.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, he ended up turning back into that guy. The butler that you saw at the beginning. Oh, you don't remember that? Oh,
no.
Yeah. When they were in the snow, he turned into that guy. And so, yeah, he was somehow, when that statue was broken, it was like, okay.
He was released?
It was released, and he took possession of somebody, or I don't know. It was unanswered question.
So many unanswered questions. And another thing I put here, which we touched on before, was I wrote Krampus protected by cross, because they used a crucifix to fend Krampus off.
Yep.
Why? How the hell does he relate to this?
I mean, I think that kind of goes into why
Yeah.
Why does the cross affect Dracula?
Well, yeah, I guess you're right. I think that took place
I mean, with that being said,
a time
not to
where-
get all religious, but what does the cross have to do with fending off anything for that matter?
Well, you're right.
It's
Well,
two
I
pieces.
I can understand why demons, for example, in movies, are warded off by religious symbols because they directly, like you've got heaven and you've got hell. Demons are from hell. What's the opposite? That makes sense to me. Krampus doesn't fucking fit into that narrative.
No, it doesn't.
And so that's the end of my notes. Those are all the questions I had that were unanswered. You go ahead and go through yours.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I really had. There's a couple questions that I had with some dialogue that was. I remember one of them. The daughter of the family. She said, "What if it really is Krampus?" And it's like all of a sudden this family's. They're professionals on Krampus.
Yeah.
Like I said, the mother and daughter go into the confessional booth, and the daughter says, "We have to confess our sins, or we'll go away." How do you know that? Like, when did you become a professional Krampus enthusiast?
I'm sorry, Dr. Krampus.
Yeah. And then another line that I had written down too, going back to the shitty actor dad. The dad gets shot, and the dad hits the ground, and the dad says, "Something seems wrong." Am I shocked? As he looks down and he's, rubbing.
And they're like, "You're bleeding."
The stomach wound that he has. He's got a stomach shot, and
because he's holding a road flare.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, phew, he gets shot.
He gets shot, and he's like, "Something's wrong. Am I shot? Like, I'm bleeding. Am I shot?"
I guess I wasn't paying attention that much.
So poorly acted. And it's, I don't know, it made me laugh. But, other than that, that's pretty much the notes that I had for it.
Okay.
And the fact that the little kid was a cat killer, too.
Yeah, and that was another thing. They kept throwing in details where it was like, well, actually, this happened in the past. And it was like, but we have no emotional connection to these people. This doesn't really matter to us.
The daughter tells the mom that the son's been killing
their
cats.
Their pets.
Or something like that. And she walked out in the garage and he had a cat in a bag that he was.
And right, and it was like that kind of a confessional would be appropriate in a movie where we get to know this character and then later on down the road you find this out, but like we didn't have enough time to get attached to this character for it to matter.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, so he's a psycho?
So he's a creepy kid that kills cats.
Yeah, but we don't care about him enough to give a shit. So overall, for what it was, it was kept me entertained. That's what I'll say.
I didn't finish watching it and say, well, that was a waste of an hour and a
No,
half.
I agree. It wasn't a good movie, but it kept me entertained. It's funny. I would watch it again for Christmas next year.
Mm-hmm.
But
I would definitely recommend somebody watching it at least once.
Yeah.
Would I say it's the best movie ever? No, of course not. But I was entertained for an hour and a half.
Same.
Yeah,
It didn't leave me like, oh my god, I just want to stop watching this right now.
Given that there's some unanswered questions and didn't make sense, but I was never lost interest in the movie as I was watching it. But
So I guess that kind of concludes this this first episode. So if you guys like it, go ahead and hit the like button down below. Leave
suggestions for movies.
That's what I was gonna say too. Is leave down in the comments below some movies that you'd like to hear us talk about, and also give us some criticism because this is our first episode and we'd love to know what we could improve on. So that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.